What's up, everybody? Let's Talk Jets Radio. Quick video here. Thank you to everybody, first off, that tuned in on Tuesday night. Another fun show. And definitely thank you to everybody that was sending in the super chats and all the comments, questions, and everything else. 3 hours. I was exhausted yesterday. So thank you guys for all the support there, as well as with the live streams. We'll be back again Sunday for Jets and Bills. That should be either a fun one or just a complete bloodbath. I'm not really sure yet. Tending to lean towards a bloodbath in favor of Buffalo. Hopefully not. But it was interesting on Tuesday to see the different perspectives or the different levels of anger that were kind of assigned to the GM, the head coach, the quarterback, the offensive coordinator. Like it seems like everybody has a different perspective or a different level of blame to assign at the different levels of this organization right now. And just speaking for myself, you know, I said it kind of a few weeks ago, and I think I reiterated it again on Tuesday, that the anger that I had so early in this year for Zach Wilson and his lack of development, or at least in my eyes, what was lack of development, the lack of progress, the same numbers, the same offensive production and output, like at some point you can't really keep defending it. And that's where my frustration with him was coming from. But at a certain point, you reach a level where you're like, all right, he is what he is at this point. It's year 3. There's been very little to modest progress. You know, you want to point to footwork and, you know, some plays where he goes through his progressions. You know, he made some great throws on Sunday against the Raiders, yet still no touchdowns. Still had the interception with the game on the line at the end. So it's hard to defend all these things, even while there might be little instances of progress. But that's where I think now it starts coming back to everybody else. And for everybody that's blaming Hackett, listen, I'm by no means a big fan of Hackett. To me, that was a signing that was done strictly for Aaron Rodgers. It worked. They ended up getting him. That's great. But this offense was designed for Aaron Rodgers. Now, does that not excuse, you know, not being able to make adjustments at, you know, week 10, week 11? Like, at some point, you have to figure out what pieces you have and be able to play call to their strength. And that's not something I feel like he's done very well. You know, the play calling has been average at best. It hasn't been very creative. The most creative that they did get on Sunday night against the Raiders was the end-around pass from Garrett Wilson. And that happened, like 2 plays after he injured his elbow. So there's just a lot of things that don't really make a lot of sense. They don't take many vertical chances, which is kind of what I remember from the older Hackett's offense when I was growing up watching him. But at the same time, again, like, this was a move for Aaron Rodgers. This offense was made for Aaron Rodgers. And ultimately, Rodgers is going to be back next year. Whether you want him or not, like, Rodgers is going to be, hopefully everybody wants him after this year, but he's going to be a Jet next season. And ultimately, if he believes in Hackett's offense, which he does, if he feels like he can run it better, or if he can make the adjustments at the line better than what they're doing now, you say, all right, you know what, we'll run it back again with Hackett next year, except now we have the right quarterback in place. Okay? So I don't put too much blame on Nathaniel Hackett. My anger is very much now shifting towards Saleh, but mainly Joe Douglas. And I'm going to start with Saleh because he continues to simply do nothing, in my opinion. Now, whether you believe in Boyle or Trevor Siemian or not, as a head coach, and this is the line I keep using, you can't keep looking these guys in the eye with a straight face and saying, this quarterback, Zach Wilson, gives us the best chance to win. You can't do it, especially after last year when they completely quit on him. And even Saleh acknowledged, I think 2 weeks ago in his press conference, Zach was as demoralized as a quarterback as he has ever seen. He had never seen a quarterback lose confidence to that extent as what happened with Zach Wilson last year, which was why he got benched. So why would you think that in the first year of running a new offense that his confidence would be sky high and he's ready to lead this team to where it should go? What makes Saleh think that this is going to get better? And now we're 4-5. Season's almost over at this point. You're pretty much one loss away from it being cemented as being over. So I have a lot of issue with the coach basically just sitting on his hands and not doing anything about it. And if you want to take the quarterback out of the equation, fine. Take the quarterback out of the equation. What else has he done? Right? If the play caller is the issue, what has he done to correct that or fix that? Nothing. What about all the penalties, right? All week we heard about lack of accountability, right? He's too soft. He doesn't bench anybody. He's scared to bench guys. Well, this is him sticking out his chest with Michael Carter's release and saying, no, see? And that's why I thought it was bullshit. The same way that they signed Trevor Siemian after all the backlash when they lost 3 in a row, that's why they released Michael Carter. Because all the talk was about accountability, and this is his way of trying to show, hey, look, I can be accountable with a third-string running back. But meanwhile, guys like Alan Lazard drops every week, nothing happens. Uzama drops, penalties, nothing happens. So ultimately, has he done a good job of holding players accountable on offense? And ultimately, everything runs through him. The game plan, everything, like he might have a game plan in mind as far as, all right, just keep it close, let our defense find a way to figure it out, and that's fine. But in the process, you didn't figure out what you had in your quarterback. And that's where I think they really screwed up early in the year, where if you just let Zach go out there and sling it early on, you figure out what you have, what he's capable of, and whether or not you really need a quarterback. And that's what brings me to Joe Douglas now, because to me, he is front and center at this of this issue right now, because first he had the opportunity after Aaron Rodgers to go sign any number of veterans, and the Jets had the money to do it. You didn't need Billy Turner, you didn't need McCole Hardman. Paid $10 million for Lazard, and even with those guys, you still could have found a way to sign a decently priced veteran backup quarterback. There were plenty of guys out there, Gardner Minshew being the one that everyone brings up the most, but you had Teddy Bridgewater, a number of different guys that you could have brought in with experience, with some leadership qualities, and they chose simply just not to do it. Hard to understand, especially with an older quarterback, but whatever. Let's just say you want to give him a pass for that. All right, fine. So we give him a pass for not signing the quarterback in the offseason. Then, Monday night, 4 plays into the game, Rodgers goes down. That Tuesday morning, we all said it on the show, you need to bring in a veteran now. Don't wait until the problem gets worse. Bring in your veteran quarterback now. The very best option that you can get, go out and get him. Do what it takes. He didn't do it. They waited 3 weeks, 3 losses in a row, until they brought in Trevor Siemian, the least threatening guy to Zach Wilson possible. Trevor Siemian. Then, where they screw it up even more, they don't figure out what they really have in Zach. And that's what I was trying to explain before, that playing these games ultra conservative just to keep it close in the fourth quarter and hope that your defense gets a takeaway to give you a chance to win it at the end. That was doing nothing to figure out whether or not the Jets had a quarterback. Ultimately, it screwed them because it disguised what the biggest problem on this team was. And this was the same fucking formula that we saw last year, where the defense and some splash plays from the running game and the screen game would carry everything. Check downs, control the ball, try to control the clock, but don't turn the ball over. So all this time that they got some wins, they still didn't figure out what they had in their quarterback, and they didn't make a move before the trade deadline. They had an opportunity to go get Josh Dobbs for a 6th-round pick, didn't do it. Could have signed Carson Wentz, didn't do it. Who knows what other options might have been available. So you go from not signing your veteran backup in, May or June to then waiting 3 weeks after Rodgers got hurt to go sign Trevor Siemian, who was not a threat at all to Zach Wilson, that put no pressure on him. And then before the deadline, you do nothing. They tripled down on Zach Wilson, and now they're 4-5. 1 loss away from their season being over. And I gave the stat on Tuesday night about Joe Douglas. Even if the Jets win their next 5 games, all right, I'm taking 2019 out of the equation here, because that was a team that Joe Douglas inherited. His only move, I think, was Ryan Khalil, like 2 weeks before training camp or the season started, or it might have even been the start of training camp. But he didn't do the draft. He didn't spend the free agent money that year. That was McCagnon with Le'Veon Bell and C.J. Mosley and guys like that. So taking out that year, and ironically enough, that was actually the best year that Joe Douglas would have had at 7-9. He hasn't had a season yet where they've lost fewer than 9 games. They did win 7 last year. But even if they win the next 5 games, you take his first 4 complete years with Mike Maccagnan's first 4 years, and even if they win the next 5 in a row, they're still 2 behind the 4 years of Mike Maccagnan. That is how far backwards it feels like we're going. And on offense, too. You look at the numbers from Mike LaFleur, you look at the numbers from Adam Gase. We're going backwards everywhere. The only saving grace right now for this team and for this GM is the fact that you got a stud draft class last year with Sauce, with Garrett, with Jermaine Johnson, with Breece Hall. And maybe you have AVT in there, although 2 years in a row, season-ending injuries. He's got to stay healthy. And other than that, what, DJ Reed? Who's the other free agent signing that we can point to? Jordan Whitehead? Okay. Who else is there? Who else is there? You look at this year alone. I mean, Lazard is your best free agent move? You go to last year, Tomlinson, he was the star of that free agent class. When they showed the film on One Jets Drive, who does everybody want to go get? They all said Laken Tomlinson. He fits on the field, he fits off the field. He's been average at best, making $18 million a year. Uzama, you gave him top tight end money. Conklin, same thing. Conklin's been a little better, but they don't use him enough. Uzama's been freaking terrible. He's gone next year. DJ Reed, that's who you have. And then who else? I can still remember the one-off season with Carl Lawson and Corey Davis. Fans were going nuts. Oh, we just got a stud receiver, stud pass rusher. How'd that work out? These moves were terrible. First off season, Brashad Perriman to replace Robbie Anderson. That was the marquee move with Greg Van Roten. Like, these off seasons have been a fucking disaster. Thankfully, we have guys like JFM, like Bryce Huff, the under-the-radar moves, the Jamal Adams trade. That gives him a little bit more leeway. And like I said, the young core, which needs to stay in place in order for this thing to go anywhere post Aaron Rodgers. But it's hard to look at any faction of this organization right now and feel confident about it. Where do you feel confident with this team? The only hope is that the quarterback comes back and saves everything. Other than that, there's a lot of questions. For most of this year, I thought this was a very, very good team that just had a bad quarterback. And day by day, week by week, I'm starting to think more and more that this is just a bad team with a lot of individually talented, gifted players. You have your Bryce Huffs, you have your Quincy Williams playing out of his mind this year, another under-the-radar move that Joe Douglas absolutely deserves credit for. Breece Hall's been he has a few big runs, but you take away the top 3 runs that he has, and the Jets are like bottom 3 in the league in rushing. Garrett Wilson's making plays, but he's pretty much the only one of the receivers and tight ends that are making plays. Your O-line's banged up. Your quarterback's been awful. A lot of questions with this team, man. So hopefully Rodgers can come back next year and save everything. I'm not really very optimistic about him coming back this year just because at best, maybe the Jets go 2-3 over the next 5 and they're 6-8. He's not coming back to a 6-8 team. If they're 7-7, maybe. But even then, do you want him to rush it and jeopardize next season when this season is what it is at this point? And it's a shame, too, because this is back-to-back years with the defense. Last year, that was great in the first half, kind of fell apart in the second half, no help at all from the offense. This year, so far, we haven't seen that step back yet from the defense. And that's what's going to be ultra frustrating, is if the defense plays like this all year long and they still find a way to miss out on the playoffs. That's what starts to fracture locker rooms. That's what gets the finger pointing going, and that's why guys ultimately want out. So we'll see what happens. Hope this team shows up on Sunday. Talk to you guys later.